Hello and welcome to Southeastern 16's baseball coverage. I'm Chris Lee, joined by my co-host Alfred Ezman. If you are a college baseball fan, you will recognize the guest who's joining us. He is Jay Johnson, the head coach of the LSU Tigers. And as I told him before the show, maybe the only guy that's ever had a better background than I've had as he joins us today. That is super cool. I'm jealous. But, Jay, thank you for joining us on short notice in what is about to be a busy time of the year, and appreciate you having you on today.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Good to be on with you.
You have got an interesting team this coming year. You have got veterans that you added through the transfer portal that a lot of teams wanted. You killed it with your recruiting class. General feelings on this roster, and by the way, we're doing this a little bit more than the month for the start of the season, so as people are watching this later, you've got practices to come and all those things. But how are you feeling about your roster as you head into things in mid-January?
Yeah, I feel very good about our roster and our team. I think my job as a leader is always to look out ahead of where are the challenges going to be for this team. And when you play in our great conference, by far the best conference in college baseball, those challenges are inevitable. And so really the next month is just about preparing for them, in terms of what we want, preparing them for how we want them to execute, how they're going to need to execute when we're playing all these great teams that we're going to play, the mindset that's going to be necessary. So I'm really excited for the next month. I've always felt like this next month is one of the most important times of the year for myself and our staff to positively impact our team. You mentioned a lot of new on the roster. And because we have talent, I think that's something that's overlooked maybe a little bit from the outside. We only have 12 players that actually played in a game for us last season on the roster. And that doesn't seem like a lot to me. And then examining why not, the last 2 years, we've had 22 players drafted and signed for about $32 million in the professional baseball draft, which is a great thing. And so we had to hustle a little bit, this year. And we were fortunate with the high school players we brought in. We were fortunate with some of the transfer portal additions that fit really well with our style of play and our team. And then I really like those 12 guys that are returning. You have guys that have had a lot of experience that may not be the generational name of a Dylan Cruz or Paul Skeens or Tommy White, but really good players for LSU. So I'm excited to put all those pieces together.
Yeah, Coach, two of those players that are returning that I think are going to be figureheads within this lineup that I'd like you to talk about are Stephen Milam and then Jared Jones. We joked on here all of last season, Jared Jones had the quietest 28 home run year out of anyone in the country just because of, how many power hitters there were out there. Talk about those two guys. I mean, even Stephen Milam had some heroics in Hoover and then in the Chapel Hill Regional y'all were in. How are those two going to impact the year you guys have?
Yeah, very excited to have both of them back and, want to express a little gratitude to Jared. He was a draft eligible sophomore last year and could have signed. There's no question about that. Definitely had opportunities, but, he believes in himself at a high level and believes in his value. And that's part of the reason he's such a good player, in my opinion. And for the life of me, I've only had one guy hit more than 28 home runs in a season, and that was Chris Bryant, like in 2013.
Wow.
So I am a little perplexed that maybe Jared doesn't get maybe some of the outside notoriety that I think that he deserves. I got a text from Bill Frankus, who do you want to put up for the Golden Spikes Award? And it's Jared Jones, no question about that. And certainly happy to have him back. I think what I appreciate the most about him is he's competitive, but he's really smart. And, there was some really good improvements from freshman year to sophomore year and sophomore year to this fall. And I see that extending during the season. So very happy to have him back. You mentioned the 28 homers, one of the best power hitters in the country. And he's a very underrated defensive first baseman. He is a very good defensive first baseman. So I like that big target, for our infielders to be able to throw over there too. Stephen Milam, very excited to have Stephen, back this year and at LSU. And I'm proud of him last year. It was a big transition when you talk about just high school baseball in Las Cruces, New Mexico to LSU. And, in the fall, he had a difficult fall adjusting to the pitching. We had 9 pitchers sign pro contracts, which was an SEC record last year. So he kind of withstood the storm. I gave him some tasks to go get last, off season, if you will. And he came back and really hit the ground running. And in my opinion, was one of the most impactful freshman players in the country last year. And he's a great defender. In my opinion, he's the best defender on our team, really good switch hitter. And, when the game's on, that's when he's on. And you love those guys that love the competition. And that's certainly Stephen.
Yeah, you've had some good defenders there at first before, for sure. But staying in your infield, you've got a little bit of a logjam at catcher, it would appear to me. You've got, and excuse me if I get the name wrong, Cade Arrambide, the high school kid from Texas, who, according to reports, did pretty well in the fall. You've got Luis Hernandez, who caught some at Indiana State. And you've got, I guess, Blaise Priester, who's a JUCO kid who has been on your roster before. How do you sort that out? And does the loser of those maybe get some time at DH?
Yeah, I think there's no loser, in my opinion, in those guys, because they will all contribute to our success this year. And I'll just kind of go in the order that you mentioned them. Cade Arrambide, very talented player, turned down some money and opportunities in the draft to come to LSU. And we're happy to have him for the next 3 years. Really good balance of offensive ability and defensive ability. He's got tremendous power, great throwing arm. Sometimes when you adjust to this level, it takes the skill some time to catch up with the tools, but he made a good transition. I want to say he hit around 360 in the fall, showed some power, did a really good job catching in the 2 outside games that we played against Samford and Louisiana Lafayette. So Cade's going to have a great career here, and we'll definitely, get some opportunity this year. Luis Hernandez, probably one of our most impactful additions, in the transfer portal. Really good balance of offense and defense. He's had a ton of experience, hit 23 home runs last year on a really good Indiana State team. And maybe the surprise or maybe the unknown was how good he is behind the plate. And that's a big lift for our team. He's a very seasoned player, experienced player. Pitchers all want to throw to him. He brings a lot to the table. And then you mentioned Blaise Priester. I think he led our team in home runs in the fall with 7 or 8 home runs. And we'll get plenty of opportunities as well. So that's not really sorted out yet, other than I know that all 3 of those players are going to contribute behind the plate and offensively for us.
Coach, this, high school class is loaded with all the guys you brought in. We said that at the beginning. Arrambide is a part of that. Another guy's a part of that who was a huge story during the draft is Will Schmidt, obviously. And I think everyone, around college baseball knows about that. The whole thing with him turning down the draft to come to Baton Rouge, that sort of thing. Where is he going to fit into the pitching staff, and what have you seen from him that you like?
Yeah, first off, I mentioned, being grateful about Jared returning. Getting a guy like William to show up is very uncommon. I mean, we lost 4 high school recruits in the draft last year. So, that was a big lift for us. Number one, he's incredibly talented, which was the draft buzz last year. I mean, potential first-round pick, signing bonus of $3.5 million he probably walked away from to come play at LSU. I think the story is you have a kid that grew up a quarter of a mile from the pitcher's mound, here at the box, that at 6 and 7 years old is wearing LSU purple and gold pajamas to bed. And this is part of his dream. And that's really cool. And he basically made a decision on A, he wanted to do this, and then B, he believed this was the best path for him. So hats off to William. We always try to educate players on what is the best path for them. And I'm very thankful that he decided to do this. What I saw in the fall was a guy that's very confident in his abilities. He throws his pitches with a lot of conviction. He throws a ton of strikes. He throws multiple pitches for strikes, has a ton of pitchability. He will make an impact right away on this team this year, and certainly has the makings of a top of the rotation pitcher on a really good, team. And so when that happens, not quite sure yet, because we have some other guys, and I want to be smart about how we, kind of move him through his process, not just this year, but 3 years to take care of him and protect him as well.
Jay, I'm going to be very interested to see how you sort through your pitching, because on paper, the starting candidates you've got to be in about as good a shape as anybody in the country. You've got Chase Shores, who is supremely talented, been held back by injury. Cade Anderson, I know you like. Gavin Guidry last year, I think I've heard you're thinking of stretching him out. Inning for inning was about as good as anybody in this league last year. You got Anthony Ianson from UC San Diego, who was elite in his league. Zach Cowan at Wofford, who is the rare workhorse. And then you got Jacob Mayers from Nicholls State in addition to Schmidt. I mean, that's 7 guys I'm counting that maybe could start for you. And I'm sure you've got other guys in mind too. I'm just curious how you structure that. Do you play around a little bit? Do you take an LA Dodgers approach where you just, rotating arms in and out, and different guys are taking different roles and you're going max effort? I'm very curious how you work through your rotation this year, and if you have any idea how that sorts out as we sit here in January.
Yeah, there is some work to do in terms of sorting that out. I believe, in what you saw in the fall is not always what you're going to see in the spring.
Yeah.
Players the age that we coach change day to day, let alone, from a month or 2 months ago. I think most of them have done a good job with what they needed to do over the break. They had a pretty well scripted out path. I think the interesting piece of this is you mentioned, and that's a lot of talent that you mentioned, but pretty much all of them will be doing this for the very first time. We were very fortunate last year with Luke Holman and Gage Jump. I mean, outside of Paul Skeens, those are 2 of the best guys like I've ever had. Griffin Herring, was a terrific into the game guy for us. And so that's 3 pretty impactful guys going out, and they pitched at a lot of meaningful time. So now this group is kind of coming into an area they haven't been before, but I do believe in their talent. I believe in their mindset. We just need to get some SEC experience underneath them, and I think they will be very successful. You mentioned Cade Anderson. I think he threw about 40 innings last year as a freshman, more than a strikeout per inning. He's got great makeup. He's got great pitchability. He made some really good strides this fall. Chase Shores, the second he went down in that 2023 national championship season, like my heart sunk. I knew we could get through 23. Like there was enough there, but that really hurt us last year, not having him available, because if you pair him with Jump and Holman and Herring, you're talking about a completely different set of results on a team that ended up being pretty good, even without him. So I'm excited for Chase. He's a great kid. He's so talented. He is very focused right now. Anthony Ianson, you mentioned, a lot of pitchability, a lot of feel, kind of really has come into his own in his college career. That was a really important addition, through the portal. You mentioned Zach Cowan had a ton of success last year and kind of a different style of pitcher. And, we happened to be playing Wofford, in the NCAA tournament. Yeah. So in preparing for Wofford, I got a really good look at who Zach was. And then you fast forward like 2-3 weeks, whatever, he went in the portal. Like I didn't even have to think about it. It's like, we want to add Zach. And you mentioned William earlier, obviously in the mix. There's a couple more freshmen that I'm really excited about. We have a young man named Kason Evans from Houston, Texas. Electric arm, plus changeup, great athlete, great competitor. We'll be ready to roll right now. Maverick Rizzi, another freshman from the Northeast, 6'9". So I like the fact I have a lot of pitchers. I walk up to the mound, I'm going to be looking up at them. And then Cooper Williams, lefty. And, there's a few more, and I don't want to leave anybody out. Gavin Guidry, really important pitcher to our success here. I know we've won 97 games the last 2 years. He's pitched in a lot of those at very important times, and really excited about what he can do. DJ Primo didn't throw a lot last year, has really improved. And I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out, but I like the options, and we still have some work to do maybe about how we're going to set it up.
I do have one follow-up question before I throw it back to Alfred. Jaden Newt's a guy that's very talented, has not been able to shake injury through just barely at the end of the year last year. He was another highly regarded guy. Where is he in terms of his health and availability as we do this in January.
Yeah, he pitched about 80% of the fall. I think the last weekend he had like the flu or some kind of illness that prevented him from making his last start. But he was able to withstand the fall in terms of arm health, for the first time. He says he feels really good, throwing the baseball right now. And this next January, February will be important to see, where he's at going into the season and kind of can he push himself into the mix of those other good pitchers. But as you said, certainly talented and has ability for sure.
Coach, we've talked transfers for a good bit now while you've been on. Cowan, Ianson, even Hernandez from Indiana State. One we haven't talked about that I feel is worth mentioning is Daniel Dickinson coming in from Utah Valley. I've heard a lot of buzz just in general about him online, everywhere I look, practically about you guys. In your words, describe Daniel Dickinson to us prior to the season starting.
Yeah, he's very talented. He can impact the game in just about any way, whether that's offense, defense, on the bases. I gave him number 14 because he kind of reminds me of Pete Rose in terms of his style of play. That's my favorite player of all time. So, I'm really happy to have Danny. I think he has a mentality, an attitude, and a skill set that maybe last year's team was lacking. And he went in the portal pretty late in the process. And once he did, that was a pretty important guy for us to get, to have this team, really where it needs to be. And I'm excited, just like I mentioned with those pitchers, he'll be going through a different level of competition for the first time, but he was on Team USA. He played in the Cape, and he's such a tough-minded guy. I think he's gonna really excel, for us. Another one that I would mention that has really improved through the fall is Chris Stanfield. He transferred from Auburn and will definitely be making an impact on this team. We've kind of overhauled some things offensively, similarly to what we did with Michael Braswell, and excited to have Chris on board here.
Yeah, you lead me to my next question. I was going to ask you about your outfield because Stanfield's got some tools, never has really put it together, I think, to match the potential everybody thought he had out of high school, but you've got a pretty good track record in getting your hitters there. But man, he's got a lot of guys to compete with. You got Ashton Larson, did some good things as a freshman last year. You got Jake Brown, was really talented coming in, did some good things at times. You got Derek, is it Curiel out of California, your outfielder? Yeah.
Yep.
You got him. You've got Josh Pearson, Paul Fry. You got a couple of young kids in there too. Like, how does that sort out? Because it feels like you've got a lot of very playable options there.
Yeah, for sure. And the outfield is a position, in my opinion, that at a school like ours should have depth, should have competition. And I feel like our recruiting success, is reflective in the outfield. I'm comfortable playing every single guy that you mentioned there. And so there's some sorting out to do. I think when you look at, you mentioned Ashton Larson, really good freshman season, very good, solid hitter, the type of hitter that has been successful on teams I've coached, whether it's here or at Arizona, hit and then develop into power. And that's kind of what he's doing. Had a really good summer, in the Cape Cod League. And with him, he's going to be the most prepared guy in the field, like just really mature. You mentioned Josh Pearson. I don't know that there's anybody in college baseball going into 2025 that's taken as many high leverage at bats as Josh Pearson, being a fourth-year player, huge postseason in 23 when we won the national championship, had an exceptional regional last year in Chapel Hill, Southern Miss regional the first year, had a bunch of big at bats. So his numbers haven't always maybe been there or, super open your eyes, but I have a lot of faith and trust in Josh as a player. Derek Curiel, hard to imagine there's a freshman that's as skilled as Derek that is showing up on a college campus. Needed to add some strength. He's done that. He's added about 12, 13 pounds since he's been here this fall and had a tremendous fall. Jake Brown, you mentioned Jake. I really like Jake a lot of athleticism. Probably had the best fall of any of the position players, on the team. So excited about him. And, continuing on, whether it's Mick Paul, Ethan Fry, those guys have been in the program for 2 years, and they're capable. They're very capable. Dalton Beck is another transfer that we got from Incarnate Word. He had 18 home runs last year. So we got some sorting out to do there. I think what I like about it is it's going to present some versatility that was not there last year. We were too right-handed, and we were too power over hit and offensive skill. And you have to have power to win in the SEC. And we were a good offensive team. Some of my colleagues might even be laughing at me, being critical, of our group. But I'm excited about the versatility of this team.
Coach, I feel like I'm going to ask every other, coach from the SEC we have on this before the season. 2 newcomers to the league, Texas and Oklahoma. You guys play both of them this year, both on the road, actually, in Norman and in Austin. I think that's very interesting. Some teams are going to have them in their own ballpark, but you guys have them on the road and stuff. I just want your general thoughts on them joining the league, and then the challenge, any challenges that come with playing these 2 new teams that maybe you don't have a lot of film on from a year ago, whatever it is. What are the challenges you face and the thoughts on these teams joining?
Yeah, I think it just continues to make us stronger, which is, I guess, great for the league. I think you'd have to ask the SEC football coaches if they feel that way. I think Texas.
They've got nothing on SEC baseball.
Yeah. So, just looking at both programs, Oklahoma, I think they won the Big 12 last year, if I'm not mistaken. I know they hosted a regional. I think a couple things stand out. They have a lot of pitching talent. Skip Johnson does a good job with pitchers. I think they're recruiting, at a good level. I think if you ask me who are some of the programs that are recruiting well out there right now, Oklahoma seems to be one of them. I think, with Texas, they've been to Omaha a billion times, Cliff Gustafson, Augie Garrido, they're just a historical program, good facilities. I think they'll obviously be positioned to do well. I saw they're in the top 10. So much like football, it doesn't seem like there'll be any transition for them. We've played them every year that I've been here, so far. And so, not sure that, that's a new thing per se for us, but I think it's great. I view our league as a 56 game playoff, or our schedule is a 56 game playoff. It's just, it's tough. You gotta react and respond quickly and be ready to play and move on to the next and not look too far down the road. And they'll just add to the challenge of that. I think probably the most important element is, if we're adding those 2 programs, we need more teams in the NCAA tournament. Yeah. So there's, regardless of what the standings look like, a minimum of 14 teams will be part of the best 64, at the end of this season.
Jay, I've got a couple of roster questions I want to ask you, if you'll give me 2 here, Alfred. Middle infield and corner infield. I think you've got Braswell, who's a piece that's played a ton of short in this league. You got Milam. You've got Daniel Dickinson. I think last I read, there was a little bit of uncertainty in how you line up. I guess it'll be a little bit of a, I don't know the word here, a competition with things unsettled in terms of who plays where, the way I read it in mid-January. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think the fall, we had a little bit of misfortune, if you will, like Stephen Milam had a illness that kind of knocked him down for like 2.5-3 weeks, the last 3 weeks of the fall. And we were about at the point where we were going to move him over to the left side, being shortstop or third base. I believe he's our best defender. I believe that side of the field, is, as always does, gets a ton of action. And, I want him to handle the ball a lot. Michael did a really good job at the end of the season last year defensively. And so I'm confident with him on the left side as well, be it shortstop or third base. Probably that side gets sorted out between the 2. Which one's going to play third, which one's going to play short, not real sure yet. We have a good freshman named Mikey Ryan that we believe is going to be a great shortstop here in the future and is good defensively. And then Dickinson probably gets us started at second base. He did play a lot of left side in the fall, but I like him at second. And then Tanner Reeves, who had a really good 2 years at Blinn Junior College, probably also figures into the second base thing. So that's kind of how we'll probably get started. We do have some figuring out that we need to do. And I'm excited to get on the field, tomorrow for the first time and start working towards that.
Oh, other one I had, pitching architecture. And maybe some of this is determined by how your starters shake out. But do you have a bullpen architecture in mind? Do you have a guy that you like as your closer, or are you just going to mix and match at the end game? Or is that just something you're waiting to see how January goes?
Yeah, I think we're stretching out about 8 guys going into the season. You're obviously not going to have 8 starters, but by doing that, it gives you a chance to peel pitch counts down. And usually when we do that, you kind of get an uptick in the stuff, and that helps you in the bullpen. So remains to be seen a little bit. I will say the best pitcher on our staff in the fall, I hadn't even mentioned yet, is Connor Ware, or was Connor Ware from Pearl River in Mississippi. Maybe he fills that Griffin Herring role from last year, or maybe he pushes into the starting rotation. So really excited about him. Obviously, Guidry, has closed games before. You have really good upside arms, young arms with Schmidt, Evans, I mentioned, Maverick, Rizzi. Jacob Myers, has started for 2 years. His stuff really plays up in short stint, so he could figure into that. DJ Primo, I mentioned. So got some work to do, but, excited about those pieces. And, I've always liked using a lot of pitchers and kind of keeping them in a lane that allows them to be the best the most often. And I think this pitching staff has a chance to be successful with that model.
Coach, I think we're almost at 30 minutes. Just, I guess, before we get off and we let you go, any final thoughts on the LSU Tigers about a month out from the season for anyone to know?
Well, I haven't got to practice with them since like November 22nd. So I'm just super excited to get back on the field and impact this thing a lot. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it's time to get going. We're such a hey, what do we need to do to win? Not focus on winning, because obviously we're here to, compete, to put ourselves in position to get to Omaha, win a national championship. But I like the pieces. I like the way they've gone about their business. We're going to hit challenges playing in the SEC. And so really just encouraged by what I see in the mindset and get out there and continue to develop that with them and be well positioned to be the best that we can be.
One more for you on the way out. I thought last year you had a really good team. That first half of the SEC schedule was a killer. And it looked like, as the losses piled up, the league can obscure, what was turned out to be a really good team, as we learned in the end, and that close from getting out of a regional. But what did last season teach you that's valuable going forward, whether that's pacing or scheduling or whatever? And I know the scheduling part with the league was out of your jurisdiction, but what did you learn from what you went through last year?
Yeah, I don't know who actually does that at the league office, but they were mad at me. That's just how it goes, sometimes. And I don't really get too caught up in it. I did notice it immediately when, it got revealed to us the previous September of this is going to be a challenge. And I'm proud of the team. I think, I will say that loss in Chapel Hill, outside of losing the national championship game in 2016, was one of the most difficult losses in my career, because I was really proud of the team with where we were midstream, how well we played down the stretch, winning some big series, playing great in Hoover. And then I thought we played good in Chapel Hill, and it took everything one of the best teams in the country had to eliminate us. I think if you just stay with it in our league, you always are going to have a chance. And I think we come out of it stronger and more prepared for this year.
Jay, thank you for joining us. Best of luck on your season, and congratulations on the success you've had down in Baton Rouge.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, he's Coach Jay Johnson of the LSU Tigers. I'm your host, Chris Lee, joined by co-host Alfred Ezman. Got plenty more of these coming up with SEC coaches. Goodbye for now. Thanks for watching our baseball content here at Southeastern 16.